Welcome to part 2 of today's topic around installing and finding new supporting beliefs for ourselves and how we can implement those. If you haven't heard part 1 that came out last week, I'd suggest you start there. So pause this or stop this and hop back to that other one. And if you have, welcome, join in. I'm excited to continue building on this idea of how we can choose thought patterns and mindsets, and specifically beliefs that support us stepping into the person we desire to be in life. Thanks for joining. Dustin and I will dive into that now.
Yeah, I love it's one of the main NLP tenets, that we learned, and it's we are not our behaviors. We do behaviors. I think that's you might know it, the woman, famous healer. I think she kind of made that famous. It might come.
Mother Teresa?
No, she's
She wouldn't.
in the mental, emotional, personal development world, she has it's like right on the tip of my tongue. Anyways, I think she was kind of the first one. Virginia Satir, I believe. I think she did a lot of work with that principle. Not too important, but I wanted to give some credit, if I could, where it's due. I think it's like we're not our behaviors. We do behaviors, to your point. Like, we can always change. It might be horrific. It might be amazing. And it reminds me, even on the hero villain, it's like a coin, yin yang. There's just this little sliver of difference in which side. And I love the quote, and I'm not sure if it comes from Native American culture or not, but we all have a good wolf and a bad wolf, and the one that's prevalent is the one we feed. And that's always changing. If we're not present and we get caught up and we're exhausted, whatever it is, things get really busy, really hard time, it rains, it pours, boom, you might accidentally feed that bad wolf and you're not even aware of it. And then you slow down, you get some sleep, you practice like the techniques we do, our routines and habits, and you just get more grounded in a daily basis, and you're more present, and you're like, whoa, I have an active choice here. It's not just this thing I have no control over. I can feed the good wolf as much as I can consciously every single day. And that can always change. And we always have that. I think that's just part of the human experiment is... I think the greats just fed that good wolf a lot more, and they're very clear. We all have good and evil in all of us. We all have that innate potential. And it's, how do we act? What's our choice? There's a lot of freedom in that.
There is. That's really cool.
And a lot of responsibility, which I think breeds a lot of value and self-confidence and respect. Because, I have a choice. And then I have the discipline, and then I respect myself, and a lot of good things start to happen, and luck starts to get a lot more common as well. But I think the more disciplined we are, the more lucky we get as well.
There's a lot of purpose in that for me too. The choosing and the feeding of this side of my life that I want to grow into, that I want to be, that aligns with the dreams I have for my life, like these idyllic, fantasies, dreams, pictures I have of what could be. And I think that I find a lot of purpose in showing up and making choices that serve that side of me and that push that forward. And alternately in other people's lives. Like, that's a huge fascination with coaching, a lot of the drive, purpose behind that. And even just that energy. It's like coaching is it's a role we both show up in at this point as, for a business, monetary side. However, much deeper than that's how we've shown up in relationship and desire to show up as humans anyway. Like what I do in coaching is how I show up everywhere in life.
You practice what you preach, right?
There's clearer boundaries and expectations in that role for sure. But the desire is to be somebody who is supporting other people's dreams and aspirations and creating space in them to see that side of themselves and step into who they are in their most glorious moments and their most magnificent uh, of realities. And I think that's there's a ton of purpose in that. I think purpose is something that our culture's been struggling with for a long time. Maybe not just our culture. I know
Probably
ours
humans.
way, maybe just human.
Yeah.
I'm obviously familiar with our culture more.
Yeah.
But that seems to has, for as long as I've had consciousness, those have been conversations that have happened around me. And just the search for purpose. And how, I think it's really interesting. This may be a rabbit trail. We don't have to go here, but how interesting it is that some people seem much more innately connected to like their sense of purpose or having a sense of
Just
purpose.
read my mind.
And other
Okay.
people, like, it doesn't seem to matter what they do. It's always just elusive. It's like the next step. They feel close to their purpose, but it's
They never
always,
find it.
it's like the carrot on the stick in front of it.
Yeah.
You can't reach it.
Huh.
But I'm interested in talking about that because I think my viewpoint on this is continuing to shift. But there's an aspect of that person who is chasing their purpose, even though they don't feel in it, that to me, I would suggest they're very much on their path and very much on their road, even though they're not maybe sitting in that in a way that they'd want to. But there's an activity that is continually moving toward their understanding of what is their purpose. And I think that's really interesting.
I like that you brought that up, man, because I want to hear whatever you want to share about it. I immediately thought of myself I was an engineer, I was in corporate sales, I was in real estate, I was a digital nomad who built websites and did online advertising for mental health. And all along, I was like, at some point, yeah, this is great, I feel aligned, yeah. And then coaching, like the universe brought coaching to me, and it was like, whoa, I now really feel like, I think that's the elusiveness of feeling I kind of found something, now I'm lost. I found something, now I'm disconnected. I found something, but this isn't it. I found something, but this is better, but not it. And then it's like maybe when people find the one person, if you believe in that, they're like, I just knew. And for me, on purpose, that's what I do now. And so I feel like I can have empathy for both sides. Who knows where life leads? This is definitely by far the most I've lived in purpose in my life. But you said yours perspective's shifting. I'm curious what comes up for you on that.
Yeah, I think honestly, my life's been pretty similar in that I've had a lot of different roles, a lot of different jobs in the last 20, 25 years. A lot of different energies, pursuits. And I do think that they were all, not all, but there were points I was connecting with my purpose during those, and like that I was serving others, that it was really beautiful, and I felt like this is maybe not my purpose, but this is closer to it than I've ever been. I also think it's interesting. I was hearing it even in my language right there. How often we talk about and think about purpose as like a destination. It's like you're either there or you're not. It's like what like what other part of our lives are that way? Like it's another
Good point.
It's another in the moment thing. Am I living it? Am I pursuing it? And I think that's what shifted to me, is that understanding it's not this place that I arrive and then you're like, oh good, you found your purpose. Now you're whole. Now you can just keep doing that. Like you're good. Like it doesn't really work that way. Like it's connected to being. It's connected to the present moment. And like you may know what your purpose is, but are you doing it? Are you showing up in it? Are you living in that? And in a way that brings excitement, enlightenment, fear, danger. I mean, I think those are all part of like being on the path, the upsides and the downsides. And is that filling your cup? Because this is curious to me too, because I know, and you may have met people like this too, who were so intellectually convinced that they are serving their purpose and they're doing what they need to be doing on this time space continuum thing here. Uh, but they're so unhappy, and there's so much lack in their life, and there's so much like anger or bitterness or aspects of that. And to me, I really feel like if you are actually really lined up with your purpose, like it's filling your cup as much as it's filling the world's cup or somebody else. Like that would be um not saying your life is going to be easy. That's not it.
Nope.
But there can be an intense connection and pleasure and joy even in that uncomfortability when you're lined up, when you are
Yeah.
showing up in your purpose as you
Yeah.
see yourself and you need to be. And so that's always really curious to me too. People are like, "No, I'm doing the right thing. This is why I'm here." And I'm like, you need to tell a lot of other parts of your life that that's what's happening because it's not, you're not showing up that way. Like you don't
Interesting.
you
Yeah.
don't seem to be aligned or congruent.
And
You
that's
seem
like
to
an
be
energy
doing good
sensory
work
acuity
and you're
thing.
bitter as fuck about it.
Yeah, you're like, I hear the words,
Yeah.
but you're not Pono.
Yeah, you're
And I
doing
feel
good
that.
things, but you're not congruent. You're
The
not
more
Pono.
Pono I get, the more I can sense if people are Pono
Yeah.
or not, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a really good point. And I wanted to say something on that. I love that you brought this up. By people thinking that the doing of the thing is the purpose and they finally found it, or they're just trying so hard to be in the doing mode, and that is the purpose. I believe it's backwards. I believe the more we get into a state of being, and then with God and the universe, we are mirrored back by the world, and like opportunities and mission and service and purpose come to us because we are being. And that may change. The doing may change, but the being is the purpose. And that may change, it may not. But that's where other sentient beings are nourished and like getting the value because you're so authentically aligned in your being with the doing, but the doing is secondary. And I think you brought up that good point. Like, it isn't the doing. That each doing that got me to the doing I'm doing was all a part of my being journey. That was all perfect. That is my purpose, to get more to a sense of being. The more I am authentically Pono and being in my essence and my power, I'm best at doing whatever I'm doing to serve others. And that, I think, is where the purpose comes from.
Yeah.
10 years from now, I might be doing something different. I don't think that's the case, but I don't know. But as long as I'm being, and I'm even better and more strong and more resilient and more Pono and more consistently just divinely connected and just boom, as long as that's happening, I don't care what I do. Because you said, like, I am nourished. It's not work. Like, what I do now, so many clients have told me in sessions, they're like, how do you do this all day? Like, how do you listen to all my crap and my pain? And I'm like, well, it's not work. They're like, I don't understand how you do this every day. I'm like, well, because this is me being in my strength and I love it and I'm serving your soul. I'm not working right now. And they're like, I don't understand that. I'm like, well, that's why I'm doing this and being really happy in doing this. And you're not. You're being happy and doing something else that probably drive me nuts. Like, totally cool. And I think that is just some of the elements of what you're saying, which is, to me, freedom. To me, it's a living. To me, I'm out of the matrix of work and corporate and office and blah, 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 where so many people are just mind numbed and sad. And I think it causes a lot of mental, emotional, spiritual, physical ailments, pain, and suffering, because they're not in the being. And in getting to the state of more of a being, like you said, it's not easy. I really believe it's extremely painful. It is, you have to be faced with vulnerability. You have to face your limiting beliefs. You have to face your negative emotions. You have to face trials and tribulations and like You know, if I just kept running or trying to be comfortable and make things easy, I don't believe I ever would have got to the state of being I'm at right now. And my hunch is you probably agree for you. I'm curious what you think about that because I think this is such an interesting topic.
I did.
I'm lit up right now.
Yeah.
I'm so jazzed right now.
No,
This
for sure. It is. And I'm not surprised in a way that it's come back to like this idea of like the energies and the being and the doing.
mm-hmm.
Obviously, present moment, presence process, all those things play in here. I think it's incredibly hard early in life to actually understand the aspect of being, like the reality of there being different types of energy, like the having, doing, being, and I think that being energy is just it's very confusing early in life. I think you see other people being it, but your native thought is what are they doing?
This is good, Joe. This
And
is
it
good.
immediately goes to
Mm.
action because that's how we learn everything. Like that is
Mm.
our format for learning as children. Like we observe and then we do the things other people are doing, and then people teach us how to do things. And we
That's a
learn
good
skill. It's
point.
super important.
Mm.
But I think it takes a long time before we realize that there are there are other energies, and not only are there other energies, that they're more important. Like the being supersedes the doing energy. Like it
Yeah.
is a more powerful, a more rooted, a more grounded um, energy, and is happening the whole time. We're doing, even as kids, like we are being something that whole time. We're just not conscious of what that being energy is coming from, and so there's, I think this in our culture right now, this happens a lot in the 30s. Is that shifting maybe not even into being, but starting to see there is a different energy. There's this other being energy that we often only learn through mentoring, through time with, um through being with somebody else, because it's not a checklist. It's not a do these things and you'll be.
Yeah.
So much of it is a letting go of those doing those things.
Do these things and you'll do.
Yeah. And yet there are activities that lead us, meditation being one of them, that is a doing that leads us.
It is and
It
it isn't.
is
I
and
don't
it
get. I don't
isn't.
want to. I don't want to cut you off. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
super
yeah,
tricky
yeah.
because it is and it isn't. But it for me, I think it always starts as a
Mm.
doing, and I think it almost has to.
Okay.
Like you have to schedule a time. You have to take a part of, or take away from whatever else you were doing. Like set aside a time to do that, create that space, um, and then step into the act of trying to be, to stop the doing. But from there, and meditation has been a huge part of my journey in understanding this, and a bumpy one for damn sure. But just like conceptually, my understanding of like this being energy is so different than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. I mean, it's polar opposite of what it was 20 years ago, um, in a lot of ways. And so I think like that's some of it's just having grace for this journey that we're on, and like the reality that there's not a whole lot of Buddhists or enlightened people anyway, but there's definitely not a whole lot of 9 and 10 and 12-year-olds that are running around enlightened. Like it, there's a process and a reason we're here in this struggle, in this physical reality. And I think one of those is leaning into this understanding of the being, and the doing flows out of that. And once
Yeah.
the being is right, it really doesn't matter what you're doing
Yes.
anymore.
Yes.
I love that about what you said earlier too, like this, where you are right now, and I would concur in my own life, like as a coach energetically, like this is the most aligned with my purpose, and most consistent with that than it's ever been. But I am also more grounded and more whole, more pono than I've ever been, and what I'm doing matters so much less. And I could easily see myself doing this for the rest of my life. And yet, if I end up doing something completely different in 5 or 10 years, and I'm still aligned in the being, it doesn't matter. Like, I
Yep.
don't care what that thing is.
Yeah.
You know, uh,
Amen.
making wiffle balls, and stuff. I don't know, like whatever. It doesn't matter what the thing is.
Yeah.
Like, it could be ridiculous if you're showing up in that being energy, and you're present and congruent with yourself and supporting everyone around you, because you will be if you are congruent. I think that's another amazing thing. Like, people who are Pono impact their communities. Like,
Yeah.
there's not a way around it. Like, when you
Yep.
are lined up, you're a beacon, and
Yeah.
you change people's lives around you as well.
Yep.
But not because you're doing that anymore.
Exactly.
You're being that. It's not
Yes.
this preachy or trying to make other people be different. It's wild.
Yeah, dude, this is so much fun. Like I believe what we're talking about, what you're saying is an underlying theme of all the great spiritual teachers I've ever studied. And it's also Michael Singer, we've talked about a lot in this podcast, his way of living, his books, his teachings. And it's like, why do we go on a vacation? Why do we try to get a certain job? Why do we try to do a certain thing? Why do we try to date a certain person? Why do we try to wear certain clothes, drive a certain car, blah, 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 have a certain amount of money, whatever. It's all because it then changes our state of being. But if you're focused on through meditation, through personal growth, through breath work, through cold plunges, through lifting weights, there's all these different ways to get into a state of being, then you're already there. And then the external world mirrors back to your state of being, and all those cool doings may or may not happen, as the conscious mind was like a kind of like chasing I don't know, like chasing something that maybe like that carrot that it never got. But it's like those are all trying to typically get something that if you're just being, those don't matter because you already have what those would temporarily give you anyway. I think it's like, yeah, like the last thing I was going to say there is the Mother Teresa's, the Gandhis, Buddha, really cool, amazing celebrities. They're like, they just had this aura. Or, I mean, to go to the top for a lot of people's perspective would be Jesus, right? Like, he walked the earth. People were enamored. And I would say Jesus is probably, if not certainly, the most, assuming you believe that he's the Son of God, the most being, because he was so powerful. He was so being. He was so aligned. He was so aligned with God, with source. He was so powerful. And it's this aura that just expands out and people feel it. And they're like, I don't know what you're doing. I don't know what's happening, but I love it. And I think that's just when the external world just mirrors back more and more positive, good doings or havings. It's just mirroring back your being.
Yeah.
And that, like, I think you brought up a good point too. This is a tricky thing, especially in our culture. We're a capitalistic society of doing and having. We are not a being society.
We're not.
That's
We're
why
not.
I love living in India, right?
Yeah.
That's why I love living in Bali. They more so a being society. The cell phones and tech and stuff is kind of generationally switched that in ways. But it's like, I've told a lot of people, like, why did you live in India? So dirty. I had this conversation on Sunday with somebody. And I'm like, you love it or you hate it. If you're there for the doings and the havings, you're going to hate it. If you're there for the being, you typically love it.
Yeah.
And you tolerate the not
Well
having
said.
and the not
Well said.
doing and the dirtiness. So, yeah.
This is such a
Yeah.
curious conversation. There's a couple things.
fun.
One, I just wanted to piggyback on the other culture awareness and reality of that, because there is a huge shift. And we'll do a pod if we haven't already. At some point, we're gonna need to talk about living abroad and kind of just like the space that creates
Yeah.
for being. And I think somebody could experience that in America from somewhere else too, much more easily than somebody raised in this culture could experience, because this is an alternate culture for them, and there's a shift there. But I digress. So I was really interested in kind of this reality of like why we're here and the struggle and learning to be. Like I really do believe that's a huge, I mean, not the purpose or the why of humans on this earth, but I think it's a really big one. And I think somebody recently asked me, how cool do you think it would be to live in a planet where the majority of humans were evolved, were enlightened, um, that we had, that we've learned the lessons we need to, we've done the work, that we're showing up as these enlightened beings. And it was really curious to notice the shift, how much I've changed in my life, just even hearing this question, because I think that's something I used to think about a lot too. And I don't think it's a bad thought anymore. It's just inconsistent for me now of why we're here. Like, I would think that there's, if half the world was enlightened, like, they don't really have a purpose of being here anymore necessarily. Like, I think our journey is learning this and learning to be and to evolve in those ways. And I think it's really neat the different individuals through life who have been, you know, the Gandhis, the Mother Teresa's you just mentioned, the Jesus,
Yeah.
who
Buddha.
have been elevated in a way that we could emulate, that we could model and move toward that. But I think the reality of our existence is that is our journey.
Yeah.
The reason we don't see a ton of those people here is because when we reach that point, like, I'm pretty sure whatever it was you were doing here is over. Like, you're ready for
Yeah.
the next thing
Yeah.
or nothing or whatever. Like, I don't care what
whatever
the
that
next
is.
thing is, but like
Yeah.
that's, I think you've served the purpose of being here if you've gotten there.
To all the many unenlightened,
Unenlightened.
beings. Yeah.
Right. And so I don't
I
know,
like
it was
that.
just, it was funny to hear that and process it differently. Is like, I don't ever think that's going to happen because I just don't think that's not what we're doing here. That's not the plane. The idea is not um, to get there, but to be getting there. And I think that's really neat. And for me, that actually generates an immense amount of comfort and peace and grace that this is, we're on a journey that is filled with hurdles and stumbles and it would be broke if it wasn't because of what we're here to learn, because of the becoming, because of the being, and how beautifully rich that is. Like, I think that's also curious in my observation of my own life is how much more willing I am to be present for the struggles and the hardships after having tasted and seen how beautiful being in life actually is. How rewarding that is, regardless of what's happening around me. Pretty fucking cool, man.
That's well said. I wanted to add in something. We're thinking I was thinking the same thing right before you said it. You're like, that brings an incredible amount of peace, and like I don't know the other word you said, but the same energy is when I've studied successful, like the top performing athletes in the world, and the top performing, whatever they are at their craft. The game, the show, the event, whatever it is, that is such a tiny, tiny, tiny percent of that person's life. And whether they failed or lost or they won or they, whatever, it's the journey of treating the discipline and the practice as the being, like, this is my life. The whole point is to become more, to be more, to struggle, to grow. The pain, the training, the rest, the gaining, the learning, that is life. Like, that is the journey. Those little moments are such a tiny, infinitesimal, like, iota of their experience, yet that's what most people put their benchmark as. It's like, that isn't even the point. That's like, they're so good at that because they've done it 10,000 times alone and fucked up so many times. They understand, and then you rest in that. It's peaceful. It's the stress is off for the most part. The pressure, the judgment, the shoulds, they melt away. You're like, this is what I signed up for. And like, cool, let's just, all right, universe, God, like, let it unfold. I want to get stronger at being. And I know, like, we say that a lot. Like, this is happening for me. This is all the journey, all the pain, everything, the dichotomy of light and shadow and pain and joy. It's all there to serve me. And it's liberating. He said it's peaceful. It's like, yeah, I'm this flawed little human, and not from like an ego reframe. Like, it just is fact. Like, and that's why I'm here, is to screw up and learn. Like, cool. And I sleep better at night, right?
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Oh, this is I'm loving this. It's
I do
fantastic.
too. I think it's such a neat wraparound too. Like we started talking about, being assertive. And in the scope of like what we're talking about, like how much easier it is to then show up as a cleanly assertive person, like, without baggage around that, just knowing what we desire and what's helpful for ourselves or whoever we're supporting in a situation, and clearly moving toward that, and without all the baggage of I'm gonna mess this up, or people are gonna not like me or get hurt, or like the doing, all that, labeling energy. Just what a neat perspective to realize, like, this is just a journey of tryings. Even the being is continuing to step more into that. Like, I'm still learning how to be more successfully than I am right now. I know that, like, I have experienced it, and I know there's so much more that I'm just getting a window into at this point. But it is an amazingly supportive universe, and I'm laughing honestly at myself even saying that now. The amount of time in life I've spent not thinking that, not believing that, not seeing that. My early life is full of examples of how that's not true, how that was just like fundamentally not the case. And I just have a different perspective on it now. And there's so much more openness and grace and excitement and joy. And wonder. God, that one's big for me. And wonder.
And play.
And play.
Right? For me, it's also play.
So
right?
much
The
play.
wonder. Yeah. Kind of going back to being a kid, in a sense.
It's wild.
It's a dichotomy, because you're like way stronger, but like still playful and present.
It is. It's the being with a whole bunch of other tools. Like, it's the beingness of being a kid. Just with responsibility and tools. But I don't think there needs to be that big shift from that being playful energy of like, well, let's try it again. That didn't work. Let's try it a little differently. Try it at a different time. Use a different tool. Whatever just love the lightness of that.
Yeah, man. Dude, I think this has
been lovely.
One of the best episodes we've had in a while. This was extremely nourishing for me. We've had a lot of great ones. This is a really good one.
Well, it's really connected to where we both are right now too, and that, not surprisingly, is more useful and more connected, as it will be for everyone who's doing something that is on their path in the moment. And I love that. Yeah. Thanks.
All right, brother. Thank you.
Yeah.
Talk
Till next
soon.
time.